Time to talk aviation again into spring in this part of the world, Martin.
Yeah, apparently.
It's sprung.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the sprung of spring yet.
Well, if sprung means colder and wetter, yeah, it has.
Anyway, we're here to talk about aviation, and last program we mentioned the Vulcan. So let's start on that because we have an update.
We have a correction.
A correction.
So, yeah, we mentioned that rather lovely, actually, the video of the Vulcan swinging around Beachy Head in the UK. It was really good.
It was.
Turns out that wasn't the last flight, but that was, let's say, the beginning of the end. The Vulcan has now embarked on a tour of the UK. There still are a number of displays to be held. The last one's going to be held on the 26th of this month. Mm-hmm. And in between that and a few other shows, it's going to be basically doing a tour of the UK. And there are some, if you go to the website, vulcantothesky.org, there are some great shots of the Vulcan being escorted by US Air Force F-15s.
Oh, wow, I haven't seen that shot.
There's a lot of really good photos online. Vulcantothesky.org.
The Beachy Head footage I went and had a look at was fantastic.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It's always something interesting perspective-wise about seeing an aircraft flying underneath the camera line.
Yeah.
And so close to the sea.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
Okay, so that corrects that.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't going to call it a correction, but
it is.
It seems you called it that. I'll go along with you.
Yeah.
All right, so what's the latest on MH370?
Very interesting.
Gosh,
yes.
this is the story, I don't want to sound glib, but that keeps on giving.
Yes, it does. So today we were sort of all waiting for the findings of German Oceanographic Institute.
Mm-hmm.
That it was kind of hyped that they were going to come out with some interesting new findings. They've since downplayed that, but they have come up with a revised current map of the area. They do seem to think that the search area is too far to the south. Their findings show that they think it is further to the north and over a bigger east-west area. There are some interesting items about the recovered flaperon, the fact that it's covered in barnacles. In order for this to happen, it would have to have been submerged.
So when you say covered, you mean extensive coverage over the surface area of barnacles?
Yes, there are barnacles on both the upper and lower edges,
right,
where barnacles tend to attach themselves. Now, they say, well, that's not possible unless the item was submerged. And they also say it's highly unlikely that they would have had sort of a neutral buoyancy where it could have floated along under the water for the months it takes for barnacles to propagate. So, maybe it was attached to a wing which sank in shallow water, was broken off in a storm, etc., etc., etc. So basically, they're no closer, but they do think the search area is too far to the south.
Now, why do you think they're so adamant that it's south? It's all about that satellite data, is it?
Yes.
In the end, I guess it's the only thing you've really got to go on. But
interestingly,
but there were witnesses who said they saw a plane in the same colours as Malaysian Airlines,
and that was in the current, in the revised search area just put out by this German institute.
Right.
So, and also, I don't know if anybody remembers, but shortly after the plane went missing, there were some satellite photos showing some rather long steel structures floating in the sea, which people thought might be the wing or a wing or both wings, etc., etc. Now, these sightings fall within the revised search area, but they were dismissed by the search organisation at the time, so they weren't followed up, which, it's just getting weirder and weirder.
Why do you think, has there been some sort of reluctance to go to a particular area over and above being fixated by the technical data?
These things are often quite mundane, and it could just come down to the fact, listen, we've only got a couple of $100 million. Go
with the most likely.
We've got hard, we believe it's hard data or firm data which puts it in this area. Let's go and look there. Everything else, we've got nothing that points to it being there, therefore we'll ignore it.
And then a flaperon turns up with barnacles all over it in some other completely different place.
Yes. So it is troubling.
Big announcement in New Zealand last few days has been that Jetstar have chosen the airports they'll be operating out of. I think they include Palmerston North, Nelson, Napier and New Plymouth at this stage.
Yes. And
the airline was proudly announcing this with the mayors of those places gathered around, but no one was really saying what the deal was. There must be a deal somewhere. There must be some sort of underwriting of a load factor somewhere in the deal, wouldn't you say?
I don't know.
Well, that's what's happened in the past.
Yes, they wouldn't be doing it for nothing.
Well, I guess they're going to be paying to use the airports, but are they? Or are they getting a big discount? Or
Yeah, well, nobody said, eh?
it was a bit like, city council idol there for a while.
Yeah.
They were up there performing in front of the judges to be chosen as an airport to go to. I mean, it'll be strictly a business decision anyway. You go where the opportunity is.
Well, as I said, they've gone to the biggest markets that begin with N, including North Palmerston.
That's very scientific.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, are they the ones that were prepared to pay,
I mean, they are the biggest cities, aren't they?
Yeah.
The only one they've left out, which is bigger, would be Hamilton, isn't it?
Yeah, though that's pretty close to Auckland.
Exactly.
And that gets on to what Ewan Wilson's been saying. I think there's something in it that, watch out, soon you might see QF 25, 26 revived.
Yep.
Los Angeles, that would give them feeder traffic out of regions that used to be there before for Qantas.
Yep.
Back in the day when that flight, and I used to take that flight a lot all the way from early 2000s all through that decade, it was always pretty well full. From what I could see, it was 747-400, and I think they ended up doing it with A330s in the end. But you could easily see, depending on loads, an A380 on that sector.
Yep.
And that would be some very serious competition, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so Jetstar is now flying to these regional centres, which probably taps into a market of 300, 400,000 people.
Yeah.
Depends how you look at it.
Yeah.
Gets them all into the major centres where they can pick up another Jetstar flight to get to Auckland. And yeah, I mean, a newly cashed up Qantas.
Well, no, a lot of these flights, apart from the, I think, Nelson to Wellington one, are all Auckland.
All right, so they get to Auckland. And then, yeah, they can get into the Qantas worldwide network, particularly North America.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Qantas gets back on that route and starts competing again.
Yep.
But possibly with a better product.
Well,
if it's A380.
That would be interesting, wouldn't it?
And then that's part of the Emirates
Yeah.
fit as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Emirates ticket holders could then fly, and that would complete the global service for Emirates, technically, using New Zealand as a Southern Hemisphere stop-off.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, Qantas are starting to fly Auckland-Perth direct, I think later in the year, or was it seasonal? I'm not sure, but
Okay.
they've definitely been advertising
Because
it.
Air New Zealand said that to themselves, right?
So, yeah.
Yeah.
So Air New Zealand is now talking up Perth, North America, with a stop in Auckland, and other Australian cities, Auckland to North America. But by the same token, Qantas, with their direct flight from Perth to Auckland, could start providing valued and loyal Qantas customers with a one-stop to North America.
Yeah.
Via Auckland, just so happens.
Maybe using the, as I say, the A380. They've still got more to come, haven't they?
Yeah.
And what are the likely other routes for them? You could even go to South America as well. That's the other thing, because if Air New Zealand does well with Singapore going through Auckland to South America, it may be that Qantas thinks, well, yeah, we can do that too.
Yep.
Again, they've got the equipment for it, haven't they?
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be real interesting. A lot of competition.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see what the locals in these smaller cities, centres in New Zealand, how their loyalties sort of break down, because, well, not break down, but who gets what, because Air New Zealand has been perceived for a long time in these places to be ripping them off.
There is that. I wonder how much loyalty Qantas lost, though, by withdrawing from those cities, essentially withdrawing from those cities.
It's probably long enough ago now to have forgotten a bit, and in the meantime to have had a lot of coverage of Air New Zealand charging top dollar.
Yeah.
And then saying, but we have to. Turns out that I think there were $40 fares, all of these fares are, which is just a fraction of what they used to be.
Yeah, no.
So there you go. Okay, so Jetstar have announced their centres, and I've got to say their Dash 8 looks quite nice.
Oh, Dash 8s always look nice, don't they?
Yeah.
It's the Q300 as well, so it's actually quite nice to fly in.
Yeah, and fast. You'll get places fast. And, of course, being Qantas, they can, we've mentioned this before, just dip into those Qantas Link planes. There's a huge fleet of Q3
Scrub them up, paint them up,
there.
send them over.
Exactly. Another interesting airline story that's just come up in the last few days, and maybe we shouldn't have been too surprised about this, because we've heard that Aeroflot was downsizing big time.
Yeah.
And getting rid of leases, I think, was the main thing. But a serious number of planes, eh?
Yeah.
And including all their new 777-300s, which are, about 400 seaters?
Yeah.
Yeah. But we also heard a while back that the other airline, and I don't know too much about the origins of Transaero, but it's a private company, private airline in Russia. It's been going for probably about 15 or so years that I've been conscious of it, from quite humble beginnings. In fact, they flew some of our Air New Zealand's old 74200s there for a while. But they've actually been bought by Aeroflot. So what's going on there? Is it Aeroflot finding the capacity that it's going to lose from handing back all these expensive leased planes, and also, on the other hand, saving Transaero, who I believe were owed hundreds of millions of dollars in unpaid fuel bills? So what's going on there? Do we know?
They hadn't been paying their gas bill, which was a problem.
Yeah.
And they're a big airline, nearly 100 airplanes.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Nearly 100.
They're big. They've got a big order of Neos, A330s, A320s still to come, which now Aeroflot will absorb.
Of course.
A very busy business flying people to Israel and back. But they do fly to 156 other destinations or something. I must admit, I was very surprised. I did not think Aeroflot would buy Transaero.
Are they buying it, or are they just taking it over and sort of taking care of their debts?
Yeah, well,
we don't know.
It'll be a large part of it will be debt relief, but I just wonder why wouldn't they have just let Transaero go bankrupt if that was going to be the case?
But if Aeroflot is too small to be able to viably operate internationally because they've had to hand back all these planes, then they need to get capacity quickly from somewhere unencumbered, right? That can operate into Western countries.
Maybe it's an easy way for them to get aircraft. Yeah, maybe nobody's selling Aeroflot aircraft on good deal, with the relations with Russia the way they are at the moment. So maybe they thought this was a real easy way to get capacity. They're picking up a real hodgepodge fleet, though.
I know, it's full of old 7.4s and 7.3s and old 7.6s.
Yeah, well, they've got 73300s, 400s, 500s, 700s, 800s, 747-400s. They've got 4 747-8s on order, which apparently they're going to be cancelled. They've got 767-200 ERs, 300 ERs, 777-200s, 200 ERs, 300s.
Gosh.
Yeah, they've got a real mix.
Well, they buy up second hand, really, is what they do.
That's what they did. They got 380s on order, but apparently they're going to get cancelled as well. Yeah, so the 748s and the A380s are probably no longer going to happen
because Aeroflot doesn't need those.
Yeah, they've got 12 A330 Neos on order, so a lot of capacity. A321 Neos, A320 Neos, so it's all happening in terms of aircraft orders, but they weren't able to pay their bills. So
yeah, I mean those 777-200 ERs and the 747-400s will be able to take care of any of the long range stuff that Aeroflot loses by having to hand back 777-300 ERs, and I think they're A330-200s, right? So obviously the Russian government has the money to buy this.
It'd be fascinating to know the real reason, because I was looking at a chart showing the price of oil that Russia needed in order to pay its obligations, and they need the price of oil to be over $100 a barrel. And now it's 60, 70.
Yeah,
so there's a big hole there somewhere,
really, isn't it?
Yeah.
The thing is, though, that there was also a crash for a while in the number of Russians who were travelling, and I believe most of Aeroflot's passengers are Russians travelling, and there's been a recent bounce back in the numbers travelling, and maybe again this is the reason to get capacity in the marketplace operated without any problems in the Western countries quickly, in the face of a quick downsize. So.
And Aeroflot's got a lot of planes on order, which they might be able to cancel now. They've got A350s on order. They've got 737-900s on order. So I'd be looking for them to all get cancelled as well.
All right, so watch that space. Speaking of who's in the money and who's not, really quite fantastic results from the two big airlines in this part of the world in our sort of orbit, Qantas and Air New Zealand. Let's start with Qantas, because we've sort of questioned the viability of the operation at one stage about a year ago when they were really in Stuck, though you were, I think at the time, also putting forward the case that the airline needed to look and sound like that so they could deal to their unions. Well, they dealt to the unions now, have they?
And I think there's a bit of that going on, but also a massive drop in the price of oil's just made it, if you're making... if X percent of your hourly operating costs is oil, and that's now 40% cheaper, well...
Yeah, that makes a huge difference. Plus, they've withdrawn all the 767s.
Yeah, more modern fleet, lower costs.
Yeah.
You'd be making money.
900 million.
Yeah, it's not bad, eh?
Profit. from, I think the year before, about $200 million loss.
Yeah.
Crikey.
Good place to be, isn't it?
It sure is.
Yeah.
And Air New Zealand.
Same thing.
Another outstanding result.
Outstanding result, yeah.
Over 300 million profit.
Yeah.
I can't remember the last time that ever happened, actually.
Yeah.
And all on the back, they've got brand new planes.
Yeah. It's all looking good.
Yeah.
They've just got to fill them up now.
But they seem to have, and the outlook for tourism inbound for New Zealand is good.
If the dollar continues to fall, yeah. You'd think it would be.
Oh, you mean having a lower dollar is a good thing?
Oh, it's very complicated, Paul.
I thought a high dollar was a sign of being a winner.
Yeah, it is.
That's what I heard someone say.
Yes.
Remember they were going to have parties, because of parity with Australia. There were parties planned.
Yeah. Politics is kind of an irony-free zone, isn't it?
Yeah.
So 3 months ago, a strong dollar's good, and 3 months later, a weak dollar's even better.
Yeah. So not bad results, and it just shows you that it is possible to have a profit-making airline.
Yes, and Air New Zealand's bringing on all these new routes. Houston, South America. It's going gangbusters for them.
How much do you think it's to do with the CEO?
It's a question I often ask myself. Or is it just a random alignment of good circumstances, or does it really come down to leadership?
I've seen Mr. Luxon present all these things, and he's a very confident person. He comes across as very worldly. He's worked in businesses all over the world, apparently, Unilever and other product-orientated businesses, not aviation, that involves branding, all that sort of stuff. And, he sounds like he's really got a good grasp.
He comes across as a bit more of a sort of technocrat than the last guy, doesn't he? He's a bit sort of grittier. It just seemed to me that the previous leadership was much more, superficially image conscious. That's when they brought in those uniforms, which I thought were never that good. And that's when then in business class they had a guy who dressed up as a chef when it was time to serve them meals.
Yeah,
and I was thinking, really, is
and they had all those promo videos where they all had painted on suits and things.
Yeah, that was a bit of fun. But yes, it did seem, to me anyway, sort of a more cynical branding exercise where this guy just he seems to be a bit more
he likes to have the genuine article sort of thing.
Yeah, but there again, on the other hand, the price of oil's collapsed, so
let's not ignore that seems to be the common denominator actually through this.
It does actually.
Okay, ironically even benefiting probably Transaero and Aeroflot, even though it's on the other side of the coin, it's making them broke as well.
Making the country broke.
The country broke. Now, we're going to talk about our aircraft of the day in more detail in just a moment, but let's get into it this way. Boy, that crash of the Hawker Hunter a week or so ago at the air show in, was it Southam?
Southam,
England?
West Sussex.
Well, it's one of those sort of fascinating bits of footage that involves terrible suffering and horrible situation, but, there's always someone with a camera, and it was caught from multiple angles because it was at an air show. I've been to lots of air shows, seen lots of displays by Warbird fighter jets. I got to say, I knew it was a crash coming, but I could feel the guy was too low.
He started very low, didn't he?
Too low, and you just wondered, when are you going to come out of this thing? But that was knowing what was going to happen, watching that. But also incredibly close to that road, though that wasn't, if you zoom back, that was very close to the airfield where that happened.
Yes, it was.
Yeah,
it was very close
so
to the
was he
airfield.
flying the line of the display line? It was a bit hard to see.
Well, it was at an angle to the airfield. I just wonder, and I'm sure other people have wondered the same thing, whether or not he was using the road as a sighting aid, because he really...
Which brought him right down to the road.
He brought him right on the road, and just amazing...
In the middle of the road, actually.
Amazing footage by, people on phones and all this type of thing. I mean, you really got it. There's that one particular video where... you actually see him at the last moment just massively pull up, and then it just pancakes onto the road. And incredibly, he appears to have survived.
Yes. I wonder how...
Ex-Harrier pilot.
He's going to come out and be a captain.
And I can't believe he survived.
Well, if you look at the impact, it's not actually a very...
No, he's got
fast vertical impact.
Yeah, he's got the nose way up. He
almost scooted along the road.
He scooted along the road.
I think the back half broke off,
which is probably what saved him. So he was left in the lighter section, which tumbled off into the trees.
Yeah,
and the burning engine and all the rest of the fuel got left on the road.
And he just carried on.
Yeah.
Reminded me of that crash. Remember at Farnborough I think it was back in the late 50s, early 60s of the. Was it that de Havilland aircraft? Not the Swallow, the Sea Vixen.
Oh yeah,
with the twin
the booms.
Booms, yeah. He was racing past and I don't know, pulled up or something and it just disintegrated. And
Oh dear.
the wreckage went up and the engine went down. There's always a risk. What can you say? But let's have a look at the aircraft, the Hawker Hunter, because I've seen a few displays with Hawker Hunters before. They're very impressive aircraft. I got to say, they do look the part.
They look fantastic, don't they?
They have a classic look about them.
Yep.
What are we talking? Early 50s, aren't we?
Design started in the late 40s, so imagine
okay,
that,
yeah.
how quickly it came on. A relatively modern-looking plane.
Very modern.
Very modern-looking
Even by
plane.
today's standards.
Yeah, subsonic, just really pure-looking. And the two-seater, as is often the case with fighter jets, the two-seater often looks better than the single-seater.
I've always admired the two-seater more. I think the one that crashed was a two-seater
Yeah.
version as well.
Yeah, T7.
The trainer,
Yeah.
wasn't it? And it was side by side, if I remember rightly.
Yeah,
the
they were
two-seater.
side by side, yeah. And they used to be the standard display jet of the Royal Air Force. And if you look online, there's a video of them doing a 22 aircraft loop
Oh, crikey.
over Farnborough. Yeah.
Boy, that's coordination.
Yeah.
There was one that was flying around here for a while, one of those single cockpit ones. I've seen that at a couple of shows. They're actually not that small. You get up next to it, they're quite big.
Yeah,
you know.
they're a sturdy plane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think the Indians had them and other air forces too.
Oh, yes, the Indians had loads of them. They had 140. The Belgians had over 100.
Gosh.
The Swedes had a whole bunch, also over 100. They were like the go-to fighter of the 50s and 60s for many countries didn't want to buy American equipment. And one of the reasons is they were very easy to fly. They were very effective. They were extremely reliable. And they looked the part, didn't they?
Well, they certainly looked the part. So what was the engine?
Well, it was the Avon, wasn't it?
The Rolls-Royce
Just about
Avon.
every good plane had Avons in it at that point.
Yeah.
Only one.
Yeah.
One of the lower powered Avons, 10,000 pounds thrust. Got it along at 620 knots.
It's not bad.
Carry a big healthy load. They saw quite a lot of combat. Even a Somalian warlord had a few and flew them into the 80s. That guy Siad Bar or whatever his name was.
Warlord's aircraft of choice.
Easy to maintain. They did have issues, I think, in some of the early development years of the plane. If you fired the cannon for too long, it ingested too much smoke out of the cannon and the engine would stall.
Ah.
They had to sort that out.
Gosh, you wouldn't maybe pick that first up.
That
could happen.
They put Sidewinders on them. They put Mavericks on them. You know, it was the go-to plane.
And I think the Indians, speaking of them again, it wasn't too long ago that they finished operating them.
Yeah, in the 2000s they got rid of them, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Saudi Arabia flew them. I think Bangladesh had them. It was very successful in the Nordic countries. Like I said, the Belgians had them. The Dutch flew them.
I wonder how many they sold then.
Nearly 2,000.
You don't really hear much about that. You hear a lot about how many fighters the Americans made, and the impression always is with the British stuff, it's in less numbers. But that's very healthy production.
Yeah, 2,000 of them.
It would have kept a few people in jobs.
Yes, and I think they're still flying. I think there's some test organisations in the UK still maintain some Hunters.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's a couple of those twin cockpit ones flying around Europe at air shows. Didn't the South Africans have one or two at Thunder Base? or
Thunder City.
Thunder City, maybe with the Lightnings? Maybe. I'm not too sure of the status of the one in Kiwi land. And I think there may be one or two in the States as well.
Yes,
so.
there's quite a few private ones flying around still.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, so that's our aircraft of the day today, the Hawker Hunter, 1951, I think the first one flew. So, gosh, we're well over 60 years, aren't we?
Yep. 20th of July 1951 it flew, and they're still flying today.
Crikey.
Yep.
Boy, entire generations have come and gone in that time, you know.
And they had amazing performance. They could get up to 50,000 feet.
Yeah,
They
on,
went
on
from-
that Avon.
That's amazing, actually, isn't it?
There was quite a bit said in the footage of that Hunter that crashed during the loop that the flaps are out. But that's a flap setting for combat, isn't it?
Yeah, combat manoeuvring flap. Yeah, that's quite normal. Obviously, they don't know, no idea what really happened, but some people are saying that maybe the pilot experienced a
Blackout or something.
blackout or something.
Well, it looked like he did the loop okay.
Yeah.
It just a bit low and a bit lazy.
Well, on the cell phone videos that you see, he's very low when he starts. Very low when he starts.
Yeah. Might have been an engine thrust issue climbing up or getting to the top of that Might have not just had enough thrust on.
But surely he would have known that and rolled out the top, you know?
He could have rolled out at any moment, eh?
Yeah. It's just quite shocking when you see it. You know, he's just above the trees, and obviously he pulls back on the stick because you see the whole plane sort of just like jerk up.
Maybe the pilot thought, I'll give these guys on the road a real blast.
Well, the way he was going, even if he'd pulled out, he'd have been trimming the tops of those trees.
Yeah.
But it's almost as if he only realised, maybe he realised a little earlier, but he realised he didn't have the airspeed to pull out, so he thought he'd try and take it as low as possible, and at the last moment pull it up. But he pulled it up, you could just see it stalled. It just sort of into the ground. Terrible.
We've expected it at full power in that dive to pick up speed faster.
Yeah.
Maybe there was an engine issue there. Maybe there was a drop-off in thrust.
Well, there's another video taken earlier in the day where one of the observers is a plane spotter who remarks into the camera. He says, "Man, that was a long takeoff run," and it was. He went down the whole runway. He took off on the numbers at the other end.
It may have been overloaded. That's the other thing.
But
Someone might have put too much fuel in it.
Surely they'd know that.
Well, you'd know that from looking at the indicator, wouldn't you? Even if you didn't know what the weight was, you'd know how full the tanks were. I guess it'll come out in the investigation. There won't be a flight recorder, of course.
No, apparently not. It overtook the Canberra in terms of longest plane to be in continuous military service. Okay. Because the Lebanese, they stopped flying them, but they kept them, and they returned some to service in 2008.
Oh, that's a good way of measuring that.
Yeah.
So they sort of made a comeback, you could say. All right, so that's our aircraft of the day. What is the official name of the aircraft? It's the
P-1067 was the manufacturer's sort of code for it.
Oh, okay.
First flight of the P-1067.
All right.
Then it was a Mark 1 Hunter after that, Mark 2, etc., T7, T8, various designations as it went on in service.
And obviously started with the RAF, but then really mushroomed out to all sorts of air forces, as we've just mentioned.
Went everywhere. Even South America. Chile flew them.
We never had them.
Not?
No, we had Skyhawks. We went American.
You went American, yeah. Yeah, because if you hadn't gone Skyhawk, you'd have probably definitely gone Hunter.
Yeah, probably. And I'm sure there must have been some lobby for that.
Yeah. I wonder why you went Skyhawk.
Don't know.
Cheaper,
and we needed to have a nice relationship with the Americans right about at that point.
Fair enough.
Okay, so that's our program for yet another fortnight. Paul Brennan here in Wellington and
Martin Noakes in Wellington.
We'll see you again soon. Goodbye.
Cheers.